Hello and welcome to Fall Through, your source for deep conversations about technology, software, and computing. I'm your host, Kris Branto, also known as Scriptable. Today, it's another duo episode, but as we said before, Matt is gone for a while, so the duo is me and Jamie, which I'm very happy about. It's been a long time since we've had Jamie on, so we had you on for like 2 episodes in a row, so hopefully this is a trend we can sustain into the future. But yeah, Jamie and I are going to talk about maintainers and everything that they have to deal with and how that is affecting us as a technology community, and we're gonna kind of just go from there. Oh, and we're gonna talk about some security breaches, because clearly this past week has been a bit even more crazy than 2 weeks before. It just seems like we're going through a time as an industry. It's an eventful spring. As per usual, we will have supporter-only content. If you're not a supporter yet, you should go sign up. You can go to fallthrough.fm/subscribe, and you will get extended content. We have bonus content. I don't know how much of it. Last episode had a ton of it. And if you're not already subscribed to us on social media, give us a follow there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like and that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. And with that, let's get into the show. Hello, viewer/listener. How are you doing today? It's overcast in New York, kind of sad, gray, cold. Last week, it was like in the 70s, 80s. Now it's in the 40s. I don't like that you can do division and multiplication on the temperature now. It used to be you could do addition and subtraction. You'll be able to add sometimes a lot of addition, but now you can literally just multiply the temperature by 2 or divide it by 2. And like, there you go. Next week, it's going to be, it's this roller coaster. It's insane to me. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about other stuff. But first, got to say hi to Jamie. Jamie, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. Nice to be back. Yeah. I was going to say, are we expecting Ian to make a late return this time?
We are not. Ian is busy this week. Hopefully he'll be able to join us next week. But yes, there's no super late Ian. That's crazy. Especially since I was like, that episode's will only be like, maybe we'll do an hour and a half, maybe we'll do 2 hours. Then he joined. He's like, okay, you're here for the last little bit. And then we went for an hour longer. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess he was here for a third of the episode. So yeah. It's not that bad. But that was also a marathon of an episode. I thought we were done twice, and then we kept going. Yep. I was like, oh, okay.
And we had a lot of conversation before the record as well.
Yes.
So like it was a long one.
It's reminiscent of when we first started Fall Through, and we would just talk. Like, we would have 3-hour episodes, and then we would stay on for the 3 hours afterward. That was crazy. Those early ones, whew, we had so much to talk about, so much to say, so much feeling. And now we've gotten it down. How we can say what we want to say in like an hour and a half, usually 2 hours. And we're like, okay, good. Now we can save the rest for the next time. But with the current news cycle, it's hard because we have had an astonishing amount of stuff happen in the last week. And there's so much to talk about. We have the Vercel breach, which, I mean, I think we were all surprised when Mythos found that, ROP gadget split over 20 packets. And we were like, that seems so sophisticated. This Vercel compromised is that same level of sophistication. It started with a Roblox script that somebody downloaded to I think it was an exploit script to try and get more resources to Roblox or something like that. That led all the way to Vercel being compromised, which is crazy. There's also stuff going on with Claude, with Anthropic and Claude Code, and questions about whether Claude Code is included in Claude Pro anymore, or if you have to have a max plan. There's also always maintainer stuff. We're going to talk a bit about the nvim-treesitter situation, which is another one of those wow, okay, maintainers are at the end of their at the end of the rope here. They're like, nah, we can't do this anymore. We're noping out. But I think a good place to start would be the Vercel compromise. So I'll just give a quick overview of what we know so far of what happened. So it started with an employee at Context AI who downloaded a Roblox exploit game script. That script contained some malware. That malware got control of basically the Google workspace for Context AI. And then because of the way that Google Workspace and OAuth works, a random employee at Vercel who had signed up for Context AI and had accidentally granted all permissions to that OAuth token, the attacker was able to hop from Context AI into Vercel. And after hopping into that, they were able to basically just run through Vercel looking for things to exploit. So it was like a multi-stage hop that started off with like Roblox and really just single employees. I mean, it's like it's basically the modern day equivalent to like people picking up USB drives in the parking lot and plugging them into their computer, right? It's like there's a random exploit over here leads to a major platform being entirely completely compromised. Which is crazy. I think there's a lot to talk about in there, especially around OAuth, because I think that part of the problem here is that the user experience of OAuth is it's always been a disaster. Like actually understanding what grants you should give a particular application is very challenging to figure out. It's not entirely standardized. And in general, those screens are just inscrutable to understand, because sometimes an app will need like the most insane sounding permissions. And you're like, why do you need like full access to all of this? It's like, well, we need to do this one thing, but like the scope does not allow us to scope down to something smaller. So we have to have this big scope in order to do this thing. So this is definitely an area where we have not figured out how to design our applications in such a way that we can use OAuth to really do what we want. I think this is another one of those, like, we have not really thought about security well enough when designing our applications. It's not baked in. It's something we bolt on top.
Yeah, like it's only getting worse for the average person. Like we're seeing, when was it? It was the Axios attack. Was, hey, can you join this Microsoft Teams meeting?
Yeah.
We've got to talk through something. It sounded all legit. I think there were actually people on the call that seemed real.
Right.
And
who also probably
like that,
got compromised. Like,
well, no, I think the thing there is they were AI generated people. Oh. So I think it wasn't even, so like it was, okay, oh, can you please join this call? Oh no, you're running late, and now you need to click this link to upgrade the version of Teams you're on.
Right.
That then installed the rootkit, and then you join the call, and there were these AI people. I'm sure that was the case. And it's like it's getting so much worse.
Yeah.
And like I know people talk about like, oh, in like 20 years things will be bad for us, even though we think we're good. Like already now it's bad. And the technology is only getting more proficient at it.
Right.
There are those of us that have our names and faces and voices on the internet for people to, like Steve's talked about this in the past, that people could very easily impersonate him.
Yeah. Or me, or you. Like,
yeah. And that's sad that that's the sort of thing that by just being public and sharing things, you are now much more of a target.
Yeah.
I remember doing some mandatory training at work, and it was like, blah, blah, blah. Don't post anything about you on the internet, because then people can use it to attack you and like attack the company. It's like, there's literally no way. Personally, I can't do that. That's very hard for me personally. Yeah. But also, like, my job doesn't work if I don't share things about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's things like that it's, yes, technically that is one way of doing it. Like another way of solving computer security is destroying all the computers.
Yeah.
It's
like the only truly secure computer is one that no one can access. And that's not a very useful computer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. You can even air gap compute. You can still do there's so many things you can try and do, and there's no such thing as perfect security. So you just got to do the best that you can. However, right now the best we can is like a little too low. We need to raise it up, because it's, I mean, even people are so scared of all of these like big LLM hacks, and it's like, yeah, like the hack of the the Axios guy, like that was a very well orchestrated, probably state level sort of situation where it's like, yeah, no, like there's once again like XKCD comic of like, you don't need quantum computers to hack into somebody's stuff. You need a $5 wrench, and then you just beat them with it until they give you what you want. Even though like torture doesn't really work, it's really about social engineering, right? You can just socially engineer people and they will give you things. And you only have to social engineer like the weakest link in the chain. And for like all of history, that's how a lot of stuff has happened, right? Like why we call them Trojans is because of the Trojan horse, and like oh yeah, what a nice gift. Let's bring it inside, and then boom, you're pwned. Yeah, it's we need to be increasingly better, but I think it's also important, as I've said on previous episodes, to like have the mindset that this is like an infinite problem. This is not a finite problem. There is no point at which all of the things will be secure. That's not a thing that's going to happen. So we have to we'll always be taking rounds at making things more secure, and people will find vulnerabilities, and we have to patch those over and make things more secure. People have vulnerabilities, and it's just going to be a continual back and forth, and that's how all of this works. And we need everybody to understand that. And we need everybody to also understand that you have to evolve over time. Like the security practices of 2005 are not good enough in 2025. So it's like, yeah, we need to have our posture about all of this get a whole lot better.
And also, like we saw this with the Utils attack, where you had most likely it was the nation state who was pushing that attack, where they were effectively bullying the solo maintainer for so long that they got fairly overwhelmed. They then brought on someone else to help support the project, Jiatan, who was then a malicious actor, and several releases later injected some pretty good malware.
Yeah.
This is the sort of thing, like, we see this time and time again with maintainers being overstressed, overburdened, and either getting to the point where they're like, okay, I'm off, like someone else can take this on, or I'm off and no one can take this on and you have to fork it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that for a segue?
That's a good segue. That's a good segue right there. Because that's almost exactly what happened with nvim-treesitter. So for those that don't know, in the NeoVim ecosystem, there's treesitter support built into NeoVim, but you still need all of the grammars and all of that. And nvim-treesitter would be a place that just like had the grammars compiled for you, so you could just go grab them and use them, or I guess the instructions to go get the grammars to compile them and integrate them. Very, very useful project for the ecosystem. And I imagine this, the main maintainer was just like at his wit's end. He was actually, I think, part of the main like treesitter org. So he was like a big person in the treesitter community, from what I understand. And there was just this one dude who was like bullying him, I think, about like, why don't you have releases, or something about like the nvim 0.11 to 0.12 transition or something like that. But this dude was like being a real big jerk. And he was basically like, oh, if you can't handle this, then you should just quit being a maintainer and go off and go do something else. And the dude was literally just like, okay, like literally just okay, period, and archived the repo, and then was just done. And it's like, oh, yeah, sometimes when you're a jerk on the internet, people will just be like, okay, I'm out, bye. And now what? Like, yeah, you got to say your mean thing, and now an entire community is rightfully angry at you for being the jerk that you are, for nothing that mattered that much. And it's like, yeah, no, like you got to treat maintainers better. But now, like, we have this problem in the ecosystem. Like, how are we going to deal with the fact that this important thing is now just literally archived? It's like, yep, nope, we're done. No more maintenance, no more any of this. Good luck, have fun, not my problem. Yeah, it's, oh man.
And to take us a little bit further back on memory lane, as a little tangent, I remember a fairly similar thing happening with Gorilla Mux in the Go ecosystem.
Yeah,
where the most widely used router for web services had a big banner on the front page of the organization for like a year saying, hey, we are overstressed, we don't have a lot of time, please support, but also we are looking for people to step up and help.
Right.
That was there for about 18 months. Then they're like, okay, no one's helping out. We're going to archive all the repos. Like, they're staying read-only. It's still usable, but yeah. The thing that really pissed me off was, so at the time that this happened, or around the time it happened, I was at Deliveroo, and I'd seen someone message internally, roughly at the time that the first message had gone up, to be like, hey, we need help supporting this. We need people to step up. And someone internally saying, should we move to something else? Because they're not maintaining it, or they can't really maintain it. So let's just do a load of work internally to rewrite all of our web services to go to another router. And then about 12 months later, when the archive happened, I think it was the same person was like, hey, should we fork it and we can be the maintainers now? I was like, no. We haven't stepped up until now. Like, taking on a fork of a project is harder than taking on the first project.
Oh, yeah.
Because at least if you are the root of the tree, like, you have other people around, you have a little bit more support.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're forking it, that's so much harder. And it's the sort of thing that is really frustrating, especially because, like, I have maintained a fair bit of open source. I have been on that side of the maintainer burnout. But also it's a case of, now something's actually happened. Yes, we can step up and we can be the knights in shining armor and we can be the ones to maintain it. But, like, you could have done that quietly 18 months ago when they were actually needing the help.
Yeah.
Like, as we found, there was a group of people that did then step up, and Mux got unarchived, and that was a fairly positive turnout for that case, but it was still like they had been screaming about it for some time.
Right.
And people just didn't care. They were generally like, you know what? Yeah, we'll move if we have to. And I'm sure, like, if this was happening like right now with the age of LLMs, I'm sure a lot of people would have already vibe coded a replacement, or got Claude to move over to whatever the new hotness is, instead of thinking, how can we support everyone else?
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough, and I think that's one of the reasons why, like, the original Go ethos of just like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff in the standard library that's been committed to being maintained. Try and just use the standard library and then write stuff yourself or copy stuff, and like that clearly did not scale. There are issues, to say the least, with the Go team's ability to actually maintain things in the standard library. I mean, that's another thing we can talk about later, is the whole UUID thing, which is now advanced to actually being accepted, which is kind of insane. So obviously the whole, like, just shove everything in the standard library does not scale, did not work. But there's also a bit of, like, we need a better way of, like, not having to depend so heavily on maintainers, so we can concentrate maintainers in spaces where they actually can work well for, like, large scale things. And then for smaller scale things, like, I think we need to just get used to the idea that, like, small projects probably aren't going to take, like, your contributions and might not even take your issues unless you are coming at them politely. Which also requires, like, maintainers to be kind to communities, but also I think most maintainers, I think that the vast majority of maintainers are kind to their communities. Like, they are, hardworking people that just want to fix people's problems. That's why you do it in the first place. So I think a lot of it is just people being extremely entitled, which has been the problem for, like, a very, very, very long time. And I think more projects need to be a bit like Clojure. Like, there's a new documentary out about Clojure, about, like, how Rich Hickey went about making Clojure and how it kind of blew up. And part of it, they talk about the controversy in quotes, about how, like, the Clojure core team was like, no, we're not going to take your contribution. No, we're not even going to look at it. Like, if you want to be part of the contribution team, like, there's a big hill you have to climb. And that was to protect their own mental health at the end of the day and their own sanity, because yeah, you are just one person giving a contribution. There are thousands of other people doing the same thing. And that work just weighs on you having to like look through it all. Like we've had stories from, the curl maintainers, from like many, many maintainers about like, yeah, every time I have to look at a PR, I have to actually like look at it. And that takes a lot of time away from the other things I was doing. And, people have gotten very used to the ethos of open source, which I think was always wrong, of like, oh, open source means open contribution. And it means that I should be able to contribute. It means that I should be able to request a feature that I want. And it's like, you are not entitled to feature requests. You are not entitled to throwing some code at them. You are not entitled to even filing issues. Like, these are none of the things you're entitled to, right? And I think that's part of the ethos that we need to change, because it is just burning people out so much. Not being like having the presumption be, oh, I did this work, you should be thanking me for it, when it's just like, no one asked you to do that work, or you should have asked before you did that work.
It's surprising to me how much we fail to recognize patterns from the past and adapt appropriately, because I think we've had this maintainer problem for a very, very long time, and we still have not figured out how to fix it, despite many different pathways to doing so. Like we just not figured out how do we get people not just money but resources. Like I mean, we talked about this before, right? I don't even think it's money that maintainers necessarily need. Like, yeah, sure, if you want to be a full-time maintainer, you need to have some amount of money, but I think it takes, like, for most people, a very small percentage of the user population to support a maintainer, right? If you have like hundreds of thousands of users, if just like 10,000 of them, like 10% of them, were to give you a few dollars a month, like, you're set. Or even if like, a few thousand of them, not even 10,000, but a few thousand of them would give you like $5 a month or $10 a month, you could sustain a maintainer with a few 10,000, like, so more money could sustain a few maintainers. And if you kind of like take the model from television, which is interesting, or like, and you have like syndication and residuals, and you set up this type of structure, you could actually build an ecosystem where people can be professional maintainers across a number of projects and actually be well supported and be able to just do that work. So it's not like everybody's going to have to contribute. And we've had many opportunities to try and set up this system, and nobody has really done that work, which is like a big thing we need to fix. But also, so much of it comes down to, like, we need to use the resources of the maintainers we have responsibly. We need to get more people who like doing the different types of work into these things. Like, there's lots of people that would love to sit down and just triage. And if you give them an LLM to help them with triage, then they could do that for many, many, many projects. Like, they wouldn't just be like a person that I can triage for this one project. I can go triage 20 or 30 projects. Just expand the power of the people that like doing that work, instead of assuming that this work is inherently unlikable. But I think like the big thing is that when these new types of disruptive technologies come across our vision, right, everybody falls into the same ridiculous, like, hyper, like, they basically run to the end of the ideology. They run 100 years, 200 years into the future, and they're like, oh, this thing will take over everything. Like, the fact that we're even discussing the idea of superintelligence or even AGI at this point is so farcical to me, because I'm just like, we know that these AI companies are gaming the system, right? We all know now that, like, Opus got dumber. We all felt it. We all looked at it. People did studies and they showed that it got worse before the release of the next model. So the next model looks better. And even in this case, like, this happened with GPT-5. This has happened with Claude 4.7. People are using it and they're like, this thing is worse in notable ways. And it's like out there now. We know this. We've known this for years. And yet people are still running around being like, it's only getting better. It's like, it's not getting better though, right? It hasn't been getting better for a while. It's getting better maybe on like partly, but as a whole, it's not getting that much better. And these companies are lying to us so much of the time, or they're like really like riding the hype, or they're manufacturing hype so that they can keep getting more and more. And like, the reality is, like, there's something interesting that Steve said a while ago in an episode where he's like, yeah, when I'm comparing it to like cloud cost and AWS and how they kind of like lowered prices until they didn't. And he was like, yeah, but like once the cost of a lot of this goes into the model, like making the model, training the model, and then running inference is not the expensive thing. But what we're starting to see is like actually inference is very expensive. And no, you can't take a model you used to charge $3 per million token and make it 15 cents per million token and still make money off of it. Like you can't lower the prices like that, but you have to, right? Because you can't, because if you didn't, nobody would use those old models. And so it's like you have to like you kind of need to lower the price so people still have a reason to use the old models. But then it's like, okay, but these old models are now like not making enough money because inference costs so much. So it's like the whole economics of all of this like still doesn't really make a lot of sense. They're not getting that much better. But like we've been here before so many times, right? It was, a decade ago when everybody was screaming, all fiat currencies will be gone. We're going to have cryptocurrencies for everything. This is going to take over all of the things. And then before that, it was like big data, and every company was chasing after data, and we were giving giant evaluations to people because of how much data they had. And we would evaluate open source projects by how many downloads they got, right? Oh, look how many it's been downloaded over 1 billion times. Look at that, right? And like you just keep going back and back and back, and we've just been in this same spot so many times. Like a new technology comes out, and it's like the same assumption. I was thinking about this last night, where it's like when digital audio workstations like Pro Tools or Adobe Audition came out, and when Photoshop came out, and when, I think to a degree, when things like Rails or the PHP frameworks came out, or Twitter Bootstrap came out, or Zurb Foundation, like you have all these things that came out, and the immediate response from people, or like an early response from people, it's like, oh my God, people are like, when Twitter Bootstrap came out, front end's dead. You don't need front end developers anymore. And then the opposite side, when Node came out, people are like, you don't need back end developers anymore. You can just have, full stack people, right? And, when the digital audio workstations came out, it's like, oh, anybody will be able to make music. When Photoshop came out, we don't need to have graphic designers anymore. When Final Cut and when color was bundled with it, there was a lot of like, oh yeah, like now anybody can make a movie. Or when DSLR cameras came out, like, oh, anybody can go make a film now. You don't need this big expensive film anymore. Or even when our phone cameras got better. Oh, you don't need to buy DSLR anymore or mirrorless camera. You can just use your phone, right? We just keep doing this thing where we just assume that like, oh no, the things that you need to do the thing, it's just the tools, right? That it's not the knowledge and the skills that matter, it's just the tools. And every single one of those junctions, sure, a lot more people will be able to do that thing. Like a lot more people can make music now, and it actually requires many fewer people, right? Before, if you wanted to make a song, right, you have to get a band together of your friends, right? Unless you could play a whole bunch of instruments and sing and had the ability to like be a recording technician and could buy studio time, right? If you could do that, sure, you could be like a 1 or 2 or 3 man person show. But like most of the time, I was like, no, you need like a recording engineer, you need a studio, you need someone who can play these different instruments, you need a singer. And then we got MIDI, and then we got digital audio workstations, and now all of a sudden you can be a 1-person thing. And you can even, with auto-tune and with all this other stuff, you can make it so that you can sing and have it sound like you're different singers, right? There's all of this stuff you can do to now just be a 1-person band that can create amazing music that would have been impossible before. You can even create entire like symphonies or orchestra compositions inside of these audio workstations. And it's like, yeah, but that just made it so the people that were already the best at this could be so much better, and the really talented people were actually able to do it, and they weren't blocked out. And yeah, sure, there's a bunch of slop that was created by this, but the really talented people were still able to break through in a way they couldn't before. And I say all this because it's like, it's the same thing with LLMs. It's the same thing with this AI stuff. Like, it's not going, like, the idea that it's going to replace a bunch of white collar workers, replace anybody's job, is, I think, only believable if you don't know how that job works, right? If you have an idea of how that thing works, like even with programming, right? People were like, oh yeah, it can generate code, so it'll be able to build software. And it's like, I don't think you even realize how much you do when you're writing software that is not intuitive to somebody from the outside or from a bot's perspective. How much you tend to zoom out and then zoom back in, how you can hold the entire context of a code base in your head, how you can recognize patterns that it will not be able to pick up. Like, it is a very, very good power tool. It's like the digital audio workstation, but for coders. But that does not mean it's going to replace us. It doesn't mean it's going to replace people. And yet the dialogue for so long, these past like many years, has been, oh no, what are we going to do when this thing replaces everybody? And I'm like, how are we still here? How are we still talking about this? How are we not talking about the actual ways that we can pick up and use these tools to improve everybody's lives right now and make the world better right now? Why are we still talking about the super intelligence, the AGI, the things that by, I think most people, if you take an honest look at it, would say, this is not going to become that. Maybe something else will, but this is not going to become that. That's not the trajectory that this thing is on. It's so frustrating to me because I talk to random people or I listen to politicians and they're like, we really need to figure out AI legislation. And I'm like, there's a million other things you need to be working on. And this is not it. Like you have bought into the hype of the industry once again. And because you bought into the hype, I know you're not going to be able to legislate it properly. Like I know you're not going to be able to write the law you need to write to actually do the thing you need to do to rein these people in. So like, why are we talking about it? Why are we not talking about, hey, if we're going to build this technology, let's actually build it for real? And I think that people just have to admit that they don't really know how anything works, and nobody wants to admit that, right? If you're like, oh yeah, we can't get to AGI or super intelligence, and it's because people's jobs are much more complicated and complex, you'd have to really admit that, like, you know, people are not just interchangeable in jobs, and that mass layoffs are probably a really bad idea for any company to ever do because you have no idea what everybody's doing. But there'd be all these admissions that everybody has to make that like nobody's really gonna make at the end of the day. So
I guess one related thing that we kind of touched upon is in the last like 24 hours, Anthropic have been testing some messaging on their website, apparently.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Well, apparently they're testing whether there is any positive or negative sentiment to making Claude Code a Mac subscription only thing, of which, understandably, a lot of people are like, what on earth are you doing? Like, this is not...
Yeah.
What? Especially, like, there are other harnesses available that people can use.
Yeah.
But then also it's the fact that GitHub Copilot have also made some changes where at the very least Opus is no longer available on Pro, and you now need to upgrade to Pro Plus to get it.
And they've stopped signups, so you can no longer subscribe.
Yeah, which is interesting. So again, both of these happening within the same day is odd. I mean, I'm sure it is just a coincidence, but it was also just funny to see, oh, yeah, two big things happening at the same time. Although actually I think Copilot may have been announced a day or so ago.
But it's still... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, still, it's interesting. A sign that maybe they are actually losing a lot more money on inference than they have been saying. And also, like, especially with Opus in particular, I wonder if people are not abusing it in the sense of abuse, but as in, oh, well, I've got access to Opus, so I may as well just use it for anything.
Right.
Opposed to actually considering, do I need Opus's thinking and deep levels of work, or can I get away with Sonnet or even Haiku? Like, yeah.
And I think too that specific thing of one of the ways that the model got dumbed down, quote unquote, is that like they reduced how much thinking it was doing. Which like now they have all these thinking settings, so you can be like max, and it like sits there for like 3 minutes thinking, and you're like, oh my god! But then the answers it gives out are like pretty great. But I think what we're running into is the fact that like as models get bigger, the cost to run them runs like quadratically. It's like not a good, like the bigger it gets, it's not just like, oh, it's a linear amount of money you have to spend more. No, it's like it's a compounding function. It's like, it's not great. So if you want to run these really big models, it's extremely pricey. And I think we got hints of that with OpenAI being like, what was it, like $190 or something per million output tokens, and you're from one of their models, and you're just like, what on earth? Like, that is so expensive. Who can run that? Like, why would you run that? It's funny because like a year ago, I was such a big hater of AI. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Where it's like, man, I was like hated on all of this so much. It's like I had in a way bought into the hype a bit, but in the negative way of like, I think I just saw so clearly that this was not what people were saying it was. I think the part I was missing was that this was in fact a new power tool for people, and that was the reason I should start using it. Because it really is like, I kind of do wish like I was using Claude Code like right when it came out, because I would have been able to build so much more stuff, right? Like it is actually very useful in building things. You just have to know how to calibrate. It's like not a replacement for an engineer, for someone writing software. There are times when you just also need to do hands-on keyboard, because hands-on keyboard is both about like, if you already know what the solution is, Claude Code it. If you don't know what the solution is, you should put your own hands on the keyboard and work through the problem, because that's how you're going to figure out what the solution is. And knowing when you should do one or the other is like a thing that comes with experience over time. But it's very easy to get into like the slop zone, where like you're just dealing with tons and tons of code that Claude Code is spewing out, and you're like, I'm drowning in all of this.
And I think also back to what we're talking about in particular around like maintainer burnout and like open contributions and stuff is then the context switching of, okay, now I need to go and review this massive patch, or oh great, it's generated 37,000 lines of code, great, how am I going to review this? Like, okay, great, I can ask Claude Code to review it, that's going to cost me a load more money. Yay.
Right.
Like it's one of those things that there is a balance there, and it is a difficult one, because as we were saying last week, that they're generally erring on the side of more code, and that could be because it gives them more money, but also just like it does take some not necessarily design thinking with like capital letters, but it does take some thinking around like, how did we actually want to write this in a way that makes sense, is idiomatic, it's something that fits with what and how we want to do it. I
think that's the thing too, like a lot of people, or a number of people, in bringing up the fact that like LLMs don't have that internal pressure that people that humans have, that laziness, that like annoyance of like, man, this is taking too much time, or they'll surface it in really weird ways where it's just like it'll randomly pop up. But like, when you're writing code, you do want to have that pressure be like, this feels like I'm not doing enough, or I'm doing too much, or that I need to take a different path, right? Like that's a human thing that the LLMs have not been able to quite get yet. And I think LLMs and their training data, like the ethos of the industry has been more feature equal better. So of course they're going to want to add more features to a thing. They're going to want to really solidify a thing, when a lot of the time is like, you want a smaller thing that does the thing you want, and then you want to move on to the next thing you got to do. And it's like, oh, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do this, or you could do that, right? And like also, obviously, if you ask it, hey, have I done enough things? It's probably going to say like, no, here's some other things you can do, because it wants to be helpful. But that is often not helpful. So I think in a lot of ways, the way that we use these tools is going to have to shift because of that lack of pressure it has. But it also means that like it will do monotonous tasks that you don't want to do, which is extremely useful. There's been some code where I'm like, I really do not want to write this, or I don't want to figure out how to write this. Please go figure it out for me. And then it'll go do it. And sure, I spent some time debugging the mistakes it makes, but I didn't have to write that code that I really didn't want to write. And I can often prompt it and ask it questions in such a way that it can figure out what's wrong with something, even if I don't know what's wrong with the thing. So there's definitely a lot of ways to use these tools, but we have to remember that these are like tools. These are coworkers. These are our peers. They're not meant to replace us. They're meant to help us, which is like the lessons that we learn. It's interesting that like Oxide and Friends coined that term deep blue, which is like the feeling of like, oh my God, this thing's going to replace me. We all need to remember that. I actually think it was the chess player who lost to Deep Blue who turned around and started working with computers to do chat, and figured out that actually computer plus human much better than computer or human at chess. And so I think that's the thing we got to learn from this feeling of Deep Blue, is that like, this thing is not replacing you. This thing is here to help you do better things, right? It's there to make it so that you don't have to sit down and do the monotonous work. It's here to help you think. It's here to take a burden off of you so you can do the things you're uniquely good at. Well, it's doing the things it's uniquely good at. And I think that's like the lesson we all need to take away from this.
Yeah. I think that's really nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. Nice sentiment, nice way of thinking about it, rather than being more like us versus them.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's like the human experience is like collaboration will always collaboration's a win-win for everybody most of the time. And thinking adversarially, like thinking that we're against each other at odds is often a lose-lose. Obviously, there's many situations in which that is not the case, in which you need to be adversarial because people are trying to attack you. In which case, it still might be a lose-lose at the end of the day. But people are still going to try and do it. And you should try to make sure you don't lose as much. But when it comes to collaboration, we should be much more focused on being collaborative than we are at being like hostile or, thinking that this thing is going to come and like replace all of us. It's like, let's, there's a chance that could happen. There's a much greater chance that the same thing that's happened over and over and over and over and over and over and over again and throughout history is that no, this thing will not come and replace all of our jobs. It will change the jobs that many of us have, and it will improve our lives, right? I mean, we talk a lot about like the how in Detroit there's so many fewer people that work manufacturing cars because now we have robots to do it, and the people that run those robots are sometimes more skilled and all of that. And we talk about automation being bad in that way, but we don't as much talk about, and there's, this is a double-edged sword a bit, but we don't as much talk about like how vacuum cleaners and dishwashers and washing machines helped liberate women from having to, mostly women, from having to do a whole bunch of housework and how they got a whole bunch of time back. Once again, there's a whole other side to that situation, but still, like, that type of automation did vastly improve people's lives. And then, I mean, we didn't really replace women in domestic work, so they're still doing other work. So I think it's going to be more of that model, because that's the more consistent model throughout history of, like, we don't just wholesale replace entire people. And also, like, it does not happen fast. Right, I was watching Ezra Klein's podcast yesterday, and he had I do not remember his name, but some New York State politician who's actually running for the representative seat of the district I live in. So, like, I probably should know his name. But he Ezra Klein was basically, because this guy was arguing like, oh, we're gonna have a big problem with like automation, and Ezra Klein was like, hey, actually, like, if everybody's jobs got replaced all at once, then I think we'd handle it fine. Like, we'd figure out how to make it so everybody can still live. And everyone said, like, the thing I'm concerned about is that, like, only a few people's jobs get replaced and it happens slowly. How do we help those people? And like, the politicians just didn't have a good answer. But it's like, that's the actual problem. That's like the actual real problem that we're going to have to deal with. Like, despite what all these AI company executives say, it's not going to be in 2 years when everybody's job is replaced. It's not going to be in 10 years when everybody's job is replaced. It's more like 20 to 50 years, maybe, when people's jobs will be replaced. But the idea that it's going to be wholesale replacement of everybody's job in that time is just, I mean, I find it to be absolutely silly. But if it did happen, that's a very, very long time. I mean, if you think about it, like, if we had started replacing people's jobs in the 1970s, right, and then we got to today, like, not go back 50 years to like 1975, which is also awful that was 50 years ago. If you go back to that time and move forward, it's like, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time for us to figure out how to make it so people's jobs don't get replaced, right? It's how people can still work, the economy to adapt to this new thing, right? Like, the time element here is extremely important, and we need to keep that in mind here. But also just the infeasibility, once again, of replacing everybody's job, right? You got to remember that people do a lot of things that you can't see if you don't do that job. And so we need to keep that in mind with all of this. But yeah, I think cooperation and collaboration is definitely the angle to go in. And be suspicious of these AI companies. Just be very suspicious of them. So much hype. My God. All right. We've been yapping for a bit. I think maybe we should wrap this up before we go for another 3-hour one.
I was going to say, like, if you want, we can go for the third. Just one other thing.
Just one other thing. You know, Ian pops in, or like Matt pops in with his baby or something. I don't know. Oh my goodness. No, this was a good conversation. I like this. This was very topical. I feel like things came together really well. Do you have any last words? Anything you want to say? Any unpopular opinions you want to drop before we dip?
I don't think so. I think I've managed to get rid of most of them in recent episodes. I think I had a possible episode title suggestion.
Okay.
But I don't know if it will work, especially based on what we talked about. But something along the lines of like, the Opus was the shareholder value we made along the way, or something like that. But yeah, don't know.
That would be, I don't know. We'll see. Interestingly, I've given up on trying to come up with titles myself. I just ask Claude. I'm like, hey, suggest me some titles. Sometimes it's like it puts out utter crap, so I have to be like, okay, let's try this again. Or I'll have to like the what was it, Spectre in the Shell. Well, I think I came up with based off some things it said, but also like whatever last week's episode title was. I also like had giving some suggestions. I'm like, how about this instead? So once again, a tool for thinking about things from the beginning. But yeah, because honestly, it's so hard to come up with a title. I don't want to spend 20 minutes thinking about a title for an episode and having to hold 2 hours of context in my brain. I would like the LLM to just be like, here's what you talked about. Here's some suggestions. And I'm like, I don't, that's too specific on like specific things we said. I want it to be broader. But I think we've had some good titles the last couple of episodes. So, but anyway, I think we should wrap this up. Well, Jamie, thank you again for joining. I like this. I think we can promote you now from guest co-host to just co-host. I think that's fitting. You're back. You've come back. You're doing multiple episodes. I feel like that's the position you sit in. Also, you did a lot of producer work on this episode, so I think that's, new title. Does not come with. It comes with 100% raise. From $0 to $0, but let's maintain our life. Yeah, I gave myself a raise. Oh, really? Yeah. I made nothing before, but now I make more nothing. Anyway, thank you for joining. And hope to have you back maybe next week. I think we might be able to get Steve back next week. I can't remember weeks now, but he's been like traveling a lot, so we haven't been able to get him back on. And maybe Ian too. We'll figure it out. We're really coming together. We're really holding the ship together, even though Matt is in the progress of having a baby. I don't know if the baby is here yet, even though it was due like 2 weeks ago. Doctors also can't seem to figure out things like when a baby's gonna come. It's so fascinating. But we'll definitely send out our congratulations to him on the show when the baby does come, hopefully by next week, because his poor wife. Can't imagine after 9 months of this and then having to be awful. But hey, that's how we sustain the human race. So Anyway, thank you, Jamie, for joining, and thank you, listener/viewer or viewer/listener, for being with us for this episode. What do you think of our conversation? We kind of we touched on a few different topics, from maintainers to LLMs and a whole bunch of stuff in between, and security breaches, which seem to be more and more happening more and more, even with LLMs, without LLMs, all of that. But let us know your thoughts. We always love talking with you all. You can find us in Changelog Zulip and Gopher Slack, on social media, by mail. We still need to get letters, so we'd love some letters. So if you want to mail us something, that'd be great. And anywhere else, in the world where you might find your lovely Fall Through host or co-host. This episode of Fall Through was hosted by Kris Brando with co-host Jamie Tanna. Fall Through is produced by Kris Brando and Jamie Tanna, and our beats are by Breakmaster Cylinder. Huzzah! Complete.